Hi everybody, and thank you for joining us on this cold December day. Hopefully you're all wrapped up nice and warm, ready to learn all about crowdfunding. It's a little bit chilly down here at Crowdfunder HQ today, so I am definitely layered up and ready to tell you all about crowdfunding, how it may be of benefit to your organisation, how to do it successfully, and all of the wonderful resources that we have available to you in order to make sure you can crowdfund confidently. We've also been joined today by the wonderful Dino from HealthBus. He's going to talk to you all a little bit about his project that they've recently launched and closed successfully, and all about their experience, things that they might have found difficult, or things that they found really engaging, rewarding to do, and how they might be able to impart some of to be able to help you guys start your crowdfunding journey. Just a little bit about the session itself before we get started. We have allowed an hour for this session. That does include a Q&A towards the end as well. Please do make use of the chat box, which you'll see on the right hand of your screen. Make sure that you're popping in any questions throughout the course of the session, and I will dip into that throughout the course of the session, but also at the end we've allocated some time to make sure we can answer as many of those questions as possible. I will also be sharing some links to the resources that we go through over the next hour, just so you can go away and take a look at those in your own time. I'll also make sure that this is recorded, so we record this session and send it round as part of a follow-up email as well. So you'll have a link to the replay. You'll be able to watch it back, share it with your team, make sure everybody's on the same page, and then you can take the next steps in your journey from there. If you find that you have any issues with your internet connection, then please do just hit the refresh button. Should be up there in the browser or next to the browser search bar on your computer. That should bring you straight back into the live room. If you do have any issues at all, as I mentioned, and you can't get back in, as I mentioned, there will be a replay. So please don't worry too much if you're struggling to get back in access to the live room, but it should work by just refreshing it. Okay, we've, as I said, we've left an hour for this session. So without further ado, we're going to get started. Please do ask questions as we go, and we will try and make sure we get as many of those answers. We want to keep it as interactive as possible. Okay, so for some of you here today, you may well have a good idea of crowdfunding. You may well have no idea of crowdfunding whatsoever. It might be completely new to you. So there are a few different crowdfunding platforms out there. You might be familiar with things like Just Giving or GoFundMe. These are predominantly platforms whereby people might launch charity fundraisers, for example. They are generally a donations only based crowdfunding platform, but the principles are still the same. You're going out there and you're amassing fundraising from your community and from your crowd towards a project or a charity or a personal cause, something that you want to see happen. Now, Crowdfunder UK has been up and running for almost 10 years. It'll be 10 in next year. And the reason that it was set up was to help tackle society's challenges by making ideas happen. So giving a platform to all of those wonderful organisations, community projects, businesses that are looking to raise money in order to help tackle those challenges. So that might be things within their community, a real grassroots level. That might be a business model where there's a real niche in the market, for example. So it's really helping people to raise the money needed and all of those wonderful additional benefits to crowdfunding that we'll talk through in a little bit in order to really get that project off the ground and successful. Let me just move myself out of the way here a moment. So to date, Crowdfunder UK has actually raised, it's over £274 million now. And that's all the projects that are coming through the platform. So we've enabled projects to raise over £274 million. We see around 300 projects adding daily, and that's all sorts of different projects. So as you can imagine, there are thousands of different projects to explore on our platform and get a really good idea of which ones resonate with you as a potential crowdfunding project owner. And there's normally something within your location as well. So your locality, I guarantee that members of your community have already done this. So take a little look at the website, see what's come before you, see what resonates with you and how you might be able to replicate that in the way that you put your project page together and tell your story in order to engage with your crowd. We see lots of different types of projects come onto the platform. Community projects, campaigns and causes always crowdfund really well. So do charities and sports. We see crowdfund incredibly well. because they have a really amazing captive audience already, but then also personal causes and businesses as well. So startup businesses or business growth, we see can crowdfund incredibly well. One of these wonderful charities that have crowdfunded successfully is the Health Bus, the Health Bus Trust. And we've been joined today by Dino from the Health Bus Trust to talk a little bit about his project. And we normally would do this towards the end of the session, but we thought it'd be good to kind of kick off today's session with meeting you, Dino, and telling us a little bit about your experience. And then we can go into further detail about the mechanics of crowdfunding itself. So, hi, how are you, Dino?
Hi everyone. Hi, Zoe. How are you?
Good, thank you. Very well. Would you be able to tell us a little bit about your project? So you've got a couple that have been up and running on the crowdfunding platform, haven't you? But this was the one that kind of started it all off. So would you be able to tell us about the Safe Living pilot, please?
Absolutely. So hi everyone, and I hope that this session is really helpful for you. So we still feel quite new to the whole world of kind of crowdfunding and fundraising in this way. So I just encourage you to try and take all the opportunities to ask questions and to engage. So we are a small base charity in Bournemouth, in Dorset, and essentially our charity exists to provide essential healthcare for people who are vulnerable and on the streets of Bournemouth, and who are experiencing homelessness. So we deliver essential healthcare to people who are vulnerable in that way. Our Safe Living pilot kind of came out of a project where we engage with patients, but we wanted to kind of make sure that care and support continued further. So for those patients who managed to engage well, managed to engage with statutory services, we wanted to make sure that they could live safely and independently. So part of that process is like when people are housed or temporary housed, helping them with how to budget, how to cook, how to look after themselves. Some of the essential things that many of us take for granted, that we want to make sure that people who are in temporary or emergency accommodation can do, so they can look after themselves in the best possible way.
Amazing, thank you. And what kind of drew you towards crowdfunding? You mentioned there that you're kind of quite new to the concept. Was it that you'd seen other people do it, or that you'd heard about crowdfunding? What was it that was the kind of the draw to look at crowdfunding rather than other methods of fundraising? Yeah,
in fact, it was another good friend of ours who supports another charity, and they just said, "Hey, give this a go." They've had some really good success and engagement with it, and we thought, okay, we got nothing to lose. This is a particular program that we wanted to try and facilitate and build, but really didn't know how we were going to get the funding to do it. And I think just taking those kind of first steps and kind of engaging and registering, and then joining webinars just like this is one of the things that really catapulted us and allowed us to engage in our project so successfully. Is that I did a webinar, kind of took some notes, and kind of came away and thought, okay, got nothing to lose. Let's just give it a go, and let's see if we can get our supporters to support us in this really important way.
Amazing. And you were really fortunate as well. We can see here on the slide that you received quite a lot of extra funding. So for those attending today, we will talk through the extra funding opportunities as part of today's session. But this is where we essentially work with funding partners across the UK, where projects that are eligible can put in applications via their project page. And if they're approved, they can receive pots of money towards their project. So would you say, in terms of the application process, Dino, did you find that quite straightforward, doing it via the kind of project page dashboard versus, say, things like maybe bid writing that you might have done in a previous life pre-crowdfunder?
Yeah. What I really liked about the application funding for crowdfunding was that it was kind of done systematically in really easy boxes and sections. And then when it got to the parts where you talked about your project, what you do, your aims, your rewards, you had those really nice snippet clip videos that really helped to kind of trying to put your project into context, not only in terms of trying to narrow down and to be clear about what you want to do, but also how it should be done to kind of maximize and the impact. And I think having those small little kind of video clips on the side as aid memoirs to help new people coming to the platform is so useful.
Amazing. That's good. It's always a work in progress behind the scenes here in Crowdfunder. So we're always trying to get feedback from project owners and see what's the best way that we can kind of give you all of those resources to make sure that you're engaging with the platform as best as possible as well. So that's great to know that that's landed well with you guys. What did you find was tricky, if anything? And maybe what did you find was the most rewarding or one of the easiest steps to take?
Okay, so if I start with the most rewarding, I think one of the key aspects to doing something like this was the availability of additional funds, and knowing that some of our supporters who want to support us and want to donate, those funds will be match funded, and that's a real advantage and really attractive. So that was one of the pulls we thought, no, this is the right way to go to try and maximize what we wanted to do. And then the challenges really was really trying to kind of identify what was your target budget in terms of what you felt was achievable. Because a lot of our work is within social care, it tends to be quite expensive. So it's looking at, okay, what is a feasible target, and then once you've got that target, just trying to be clear in terms of accessing the additional funding, which I know you're going to talk about later, but also the amount of supporters that you need and require. So that was a little bit tricky because we thought we got over the line, and then we thought, no, we haven't got over the line, and then we needed extra supporters, and then we did, so it was a bit of a journey, but I think now that we've done it and we kind of understand the process of knowing, what we need in terms of funding, but also in terms of how many people support you. And I think that was a key thing, a big learning curve for us in terms of making this project successful.
Amazing, thank you. And you're right, so many of our different funding kind of pots do come with pledge criteria where they'll be set out kind of milestones for people to potentially hit in order to release that money. Not all of them, but some of them do. And I think the majority of yours did, didn't they, Dino? So it's
absolutely.
Needing to get a set amount of unique supporters, so unique individuals that are donating to the campaign, as well as some other milestones that would need to be hit too. So it's a learning curve, isn't it? But I think you really embraced it, and you came kind of late to the crowdfunding journey, didn't you? Because you kind of stepped in partway through and kind of took on the reins of being the project owner. So it was a really steep learning curve for you, but you did incredibly well, did really well. And you've got another live project on the platform at the moment as well, which is brilliant. I'll share the link to that one because everyone can go support that one, because we're talking about the successful one now. However, there is one currently live, isn't there? So let me just pop the link in there as well. So it's obviously not scared you off crowdfunding, the process. You've come back and done it.
No, not at all. I think it's often the way that when you're jumping into something new, it's so, or can be daunting. But I think now that we've kind of got to kind of grips with it, what it's allowed us to do is it's allowed us to kind of think of our fundraising in a slightly different way. And this is another different avenue that we can utilize and use. And I know that for many organizations and charities across the UK, you will have supporters that want to be able to support and to give, and actually turning those kind of little pledges and having them match funding actually really adds up. And for us, that's what's been a really huge winner. So, we're not a large charity. We're relatively kind of small and new in terms of charity status. We're only like 3 years old. So we're still really new to the platform and to the sector. But we really kind of found actually gathering the support and connecting with our supporters in this way. I think supporters love it, the fact that they can give and know that it's going to be match funded. That's been a real benefit for us.
Yeah, it can be a really big boost and a great message to kind of go out to your crowd, isn't it? It's a really brilliant way to build momentum. It's kind of a catalyst for support, isn't it? It's brilliant. In terms of those added benefits, you talked there about being able to kind of engage with your supporters. Would you say there's been any added benefits other than the financial raise for launching a crowdfunder? Has it maybe helped build awareness about you guys and what you do at HealthBus, for example?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So kind of, the raising awareness has been really beneficial for us because it's allowed for us to connect with people outside of our geographical area. So we've had other people contact us to say, hey, heard about what you're doing. This is really, really great. It then allows us to kind of share with other partners and networks within the same sector that we're looking at. So we can encourage them to say, hey guys, this is what we're doing in terms of working with people who are vulnerable, in terms of meeting the unmet need in many of our communities due to the climate that we're in at the moment. So that's been really beneficial. And also kind of outside of the platform as well. So what this has done is that we've had some of our supporters contact us to say, and they've given to us and they're really pleased that that's been match funded, but then just looking at other ways where they want to then give in other ways that are practical. So we've launched another campaign. It's not crowdfunding, but it's where we've got some of our supporters locally who are able to give essential items that we are collecting, so that in the next few weeks, whilst the weather gets particularly cold here in the south, and over the Christmas and festive season, we're going to be giving out what we call bags of hope. So these are just bags with some essential everyday items, like hat, scarf, gloves, toiletries, Vaseline, that some of our patients will require or need when they're either in temporary accommodation or on the streets. And that's been great because that's allowed some of our supporters to then give practical in that way as well.
That's amazing. That's really lovely. And it's great that that kind of momentum is still building. You know, it doesn't end when the crowdfunder closes necessarily. You've got this lovely kind of level of support going forward, which is wonderful. I just want to ask people today if they've got any questions for you, because you're going to have to shoot off fairly soon, aren't you? You're not with us for the whole session, unfortunately. So if anybody has any questions for Dino while we have him here, please do pop a question into the chat box. Would you have any piece of takeaway advice maybe that you could offer to anyone that might be starting to think about crowdfunding?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the main things is joining the webinar like this. We found this so helpful. Second thing is another tip is that once you've gone away and done the webinar, maybe go away and rewatch it again a little bit later, because when I did it, there were some key things that I missed the first time around that I managed to pick up. Second, really speak to your team about it. So if you're kind of working in I don't know, fundraising or marketing teams, or as a wider charity team, really engage the team about what you're doing, because from there, when we were doing the first kind of project and trying to get our supporters going, that's where we're kind of using friends and families and loved ones, and the whole team was then messaging out to say, right, this is what we're doing, it's all match funded. So that's great. And I think the biggest one for us was just reaching out to you guys, really, Zoe, from when we had either things that we didn't really understand or get, kind of think, well, how do we do this and how do we do that? And actually having that kind of email message where we can just message you and get a reply pretty swiftly was, absolutely amazing for us, because we kind of felt like, that crowdfunding was kind of this weird thing up in the clouds somewhere, up there in the gods. And actually knowing that there are actually, human, nice, wonderful people in the clouds that are wanting to help us was really, really vital. So I'd really encourage, if you're not sure, ask, email out, and I'm sure that Zoe and the crowdfunding team will get back to you, and they have been absolutely brilliant.
Oh, thank you. That's very kind of you to say.
Pleasure.
I think a lot of people have maybe a slight misconception that it's a great big entity and quite faceless, whereas actually we're quite a small company. The majority of us are based down here in Cornwall, believe it or not, but we are real people, and we do this because we want to see projects like yourselves a success and make real differences to their community. So please do engage with us, engage with the webinars and the drop-ins and things, and we will do everything we can to support project owners. Definitely. We've had a great few questions coming in. So first one we've had is, when is the deadline for giving for the link that I've shared? So for your most recent project, I think it's the 27th of December. Am I right in saying that? Where people can donate up until that point? Do you know?
Yep, that's correct. Yep.
Brilliant. So that project is live up until the 27th, but you also have a charity profile on our website as well, don't you? Which is something that's open to all charities, big and small. As long as you're a registered charity, you can have a profile that sits permanently on our website and people can donate at any time. It doesn't have to be linked to a particular project. So that's quite a nice thing to do as well. This is from Jack. Do you know how far into your campaign were you when you started your crowdfunding page? So this one, because you weren't part of the team initially, were you?
No, I wasn't. No. So I took over because one of my my predecessor or the gentleman who was looking after the funding had some ill health. So I came in really as kind of a volunteer to help out. So he kind of launched it, and I came into probably maybe 2 weeks or so into it. We knew we had this need that we wanted to do, that we wanted to, get people safely off the streets and into safe accommodation. And over the pandemic, we'd seen the benefits of that. But then we wanted to make sure that people had the skills and the tools to facilitate and look after their own needs, but in a safe way. And actually, when we set our original target, we wanted to kind of think, well, what are the actual essentials? So we set our target for about £3,000. I think our original target was thinking, right, this is kind of what the bare minimum of kind of what we want to do and deliver. And I think then just by making sure that your profile information on your project page, explaining what you do, how you're going to do it, and what the outcomes were really essential for us, and we were able to tweak and modify and update that. And then that allowed them to share out to our supporters, and we managed to go beyond our target, which is fantastic, because that means that we can then deliver something that's a little bit more in depth and a little bit more bespoke to meeting some of the patient needs that we engage with.
Amazing, thank you. This one we've had come in from Bryn, asking about the match funding. So is that matching of crowdfunding or by their own organisation or external body? So from a crowdfunder point of view, with the match funding, it's set up so that it matches against donations to your page from your crowd. So that's going to be all of those individual donations that I mentioned. We will go into a little bit more detail further on into the session about extra funding. But as we mentioned, each of the different kind of funding approvals do come with set criteria that you would need to meet. And that sometimes is reaching a set percentage raise yourself, by a set amount of people, and that's to encourage you really to go out and engage with your community rather than you as an organisation putting in some money and that being topped up. It's really for you to embrace the crowdfunding element. So that's really going out and kind of engaging with your supporters, bringing in as many individual members of the community and your crowd as possible to donate, and then those are the ones that will get matched. Just very quickly, because I'm conscious that you need to leave us in a moment. Okay, so what advice can you give to an organisation about promoting? So in terms of how did you get exposure for your campaign? Did you share it via social media, email, papers?
Yeah, we did everything that we could possible. So one of the great things about the campaign is that it allows you to then facilitate links, so you can share it on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram. We then sent links out via WhatsApp to loved ones and family. So anywhere where there was a digital platform where we could share, we shared.
Amazing.
And I think most people who would either know you or your organization or your charity really don't mind. And in some cases, like right at the very end, when we applying for the extra funding is really easy, by the way, really, really simple. It's really easy. So please don't worry about that. But then when we got to the part where we were towards the end of our, I think it was literally the last day before our funding was to close, we needed like 3 supporters. And so therefore, it was just a matter of trying to message out, email out and say, would you be able to spare £1, which would then be match funded, but then it gives us the required supporters that we needed to get over the line. So anywhere possible, we did it, and it was really well received. So please don't feel nervous about using all digital means to your disposal to do that.
Amazing, thank you. Have you got time for one more quick one?
Yeah. Go on.
You sure? Okay, so this one is from Joseph. The others I haven't ignored. I'm thinking I might be able to answer them myself as they're slightly more crowdfunded generic, and we'll go over those. But this one specifically for you, Dino. How long did it take for you to feel happy with the information on the crowdfunder project page? Did it feel very different to your normal grant fund applications?
Yes. So in my experience, in terms of applying for grant funding, the information that's required is a little more in depth, because they want to know about the project, the impact, and they're looking at your charity status, your financial income, all this sort of stuff. On this side with the crowdfunder, when you click through, they give you almost like a, not a limitation, but a suggestion in terms of trying to keep it compact and concise, because as you can appreciate, the audience is different. The audience are those who are supporting you, and maybe others from other businesses or other organization that then want to then match funds. So my suggestion would be, keep it short, keep it precise, keep it clear in terms of what you want to do. The guidance on terms of doing your little video is really, really helpful. And we spent a couple hours just doing the video, because we wanted to get it right. So in the end, we went for a 40-second short little snapshot of one of our outreach nurses just talking a little bit about what we're doing and what the need was. So I think, you don't need to produce the next Spielberg film or anything like that. Just keep it short, keep it snappy. And then if you get it all nicely out on the page, what we did is that when we did it and we kind of redrafted it, we then got someone else who was from outside the organization to say, hey, have a look at this. Does this make sense? And if they turn around and said, yeah, then we hit the go button. So that's how we did it.
Amazing. It's a really good idea to reach out and ask for feedback, because you're so inside of the project.
Absolutely.
The way that you're wording something might be to people who know about what you're doing already. So think about those different audiences. You'll have people that already support you. That might be service users. That might be people that engage with you already, that know exactly who you are and what you do. You'll be writing to kind of engage with them, but also think about people from a wider kind of crowd who might not actually know what you guys do. So it's about gaining that feedback from different areas of your network to see if the message is landing well with everybody. But that's really brilliant advice. Thank you, Dino. And I think we've managed to cut it just in time, so you can head off to your next appointment. But thank you so much for joining us. Some really, really valuable information.
Pleasure, and wish everyone all the very best, and just go for it. Utilize Zoe and the team and go for it. Just jump straight in.
Amazing. Thank you so much.
All the very best. Thank you so much. Take care.
Take care, Dino. Bye.
Bye.
Well, some brilliant food for thought there. Hopefully you guys have taken lots of information from Dino. Somebody that's been there and done that, I think it's really invaluable to kind of hear their take on it all. It might have made things a little bit confusing, because we kind of jumped ahead with quite a few things that we would normally cover throughout the course of the webinar and then hear from our project owner. But we really wanted to have Dino here today, and unfortunately he could only do this first kind of portion of the session. So in terms of those questions that we've had coming in, we will be able to cover some of those off in the next kind of half an hour when we go through the next few slides. So we mentioned, and Dino mentioned rewards there when he was having his chat about what was on the page. So Crowdfunder UK is actually a rewards-based crowdfunding platform. That's what is our real standout from these other platforms like Just Giving and GoFundMe. And just to answer, we've got a question here about the difference between crowdfunding and fundraising. Really, there's not any difference. The principle is still the same. You're raising money for a particular cause or project from your community and from your crowd. Crowdfunder UK, the way in which we operate is we allow you to do a few different things to enhance your fundraising ability, basically. So the first is that you can put rewards onto your page. And we'll look at rewards in a little bit more detail in a moment. But essentially, a reward is a benefit of some kind in return for a financial contribution. So that's a great way to say thank you to your supporters for them donating their money to your crowdfunding page. They can claim on one of these rewards that you would have thought about. These are brilliant things that you can offer, and that might be a product, a service, tickets to an event, for example, that you might be hosting as an organisation, or you might also reach out to your community and see what different things could be gifted to you, much like you would have done an offline raffle. You know, people would have gone around the high street and said, we are raising money for this particular cause, project, charity, whatever it might be. Is there anything that you could possibly give us that we could put into our raffle? So that's the principle. But rather than having it as a raffle prize, it would be a reward on your project page for a set amount of money. So you might go to your local high street cafe and they might offer you a discount on coffee, for example, or they might offer you a meal for two and they give you a voucher for a meal for two and you pop it onto your page at a discounted rate. That way, the person who's giving to your page will have a bargain by being able to claim this voucher at a discounted rate, and also their money's going towards something really wonderful, which is, of course, your project. There are lots of additional benefits to crowdfunding. Dino mentioned a few of those there in our little chat. The first one is validation. So it's going to really build confidence in your idea. You'll develop confidence in your idea by having some brilliant messages of support, but also the confidence within your crowd is going to build. And it's going to see if there's an appetite for your project and what you're hoping to deliver to your community. You'll build awareness and create a buzz around the project actually happening. Obviously, once you've been able to run your successful crowdfunder and you're going to bring this brilliant idea to those around you, you've got a captive audience that are ready and waiting for you to deliver that project. You'll also potentially get noticed by a wider audience. So we will teach you all of the tools and hints and tricks to be able to engage with people beyond your core network. So you're looking at your wider community. By being noticed by that wider community, that's going to, again, enhance that awareness, might even create a wider customer base or service users, for example. Everybody that supports your crowdfunding campaign will automatically become an advocate. They'll start talking about you and your wonderful projects to their friends and family. We talk about projects here at Crowdfunder, for example, bringing them into webinars or talking to our friends about these wonderful projects that we've seen come onto the platform. So just by nature of putting your message out there and telling your story on our platform, people will become engaged and you'll create meaningful connections going forward, especially within your core network and your community, because you'll be tasked with going out and speaking about it and developing those connections and those positive relationships going forward. You'll learn new skills. We'll give you all of our wonderful resources for you to make use of. You may well learn social media promotion that might not come naturally to you, being able to tell an engaging story, being able to network and communicate with people outside of your organization. All of these are really brilliant transferable skills going forward. You'll be able to access as well the extra funding and support that we have on offer. So we work with over 70 national and regional partners, and that's everybody from local authorities through to great big national corporations that have pots of money that they would like to put towards eligible projects. It's always a good idea to check out any of the extra funding that might be available to you and your particular project. And as Dino has said, putting in those applications, you can receive more than one extra funding pledge from various partners. So it's not a case of picking one of these match funding partners. When you go through the process of setting up a crowdfunding page, dependent on your organizational structure and what you're crowdfunding for and where you are in the country, our computer system will match you with relevant funding partners that may well want to support you. So you then put in applications for each of those, and you may well be as fortunate as Dino to be supported by multiple funding partners to really boost your fundraising. And again, this can create brilliant connections going forward. We've had lots of wonderful stories where projects have been supported by their local authority, and that's led to wonderful partnerships going forward, or even with the bigger corporations, and obviously then the ability to be potentially promoted by them or feature as part of their network going forward. So it can be a really good promotional and marketing tool for your particular organisation and project. So how it works in a nutshell is you sign up to Crowdfunder UK. So you click Start Crowdfunding. You'll be prompted to set up an account with us. It's all it's a free account. Essentially, you're not paying for the service at this stage. Dependent on your organisational structure, there will be fees attached to your crowdfunding page, but all of the setup is completely free. So you'd start your crowdfunding page, you create a really engaging page telling us all about who you are, what you're crowdfunding for, keeping it highly visual, adding videos where possible, just to make sure you can really capture your supporters' engagement. As Dino mentioned, it's a snapshot into what you're doing. Okay, it's a snapshot into your project. So keep it concise, keep it snappy, keep it visual, just to really hold your readers' attention throughout the whole page. If there's lots of information that you hold on maybe a website or something like that, where people can they could click on a hyperlink on your page and be taken to your website to read more about who you are as an organization, I would always recommend adding in a link to the page rather than transposing all of that information from the website over to your page. Think about the real key aspects of what you're trying to convey in your story and keep it as engaging as possible. You then go on to add a range of rewards if you want to. There's no prerequisite that says that you have to add rewards to your page. One thing to be mindful of, though, is there are certain funding partners that would require you to add rewards, such as our sports partners. They really want to see rewards on there, but not every funding partner does, and it definitely doesn't stop you from crowdfunding if you don't want to add rewards. We just know that by having them on there, it can incentivize your supporters giving, and the average donation or pledge could raise from around £20 to around £50 per supporter pledge if you have rewards on there. So do think about it, but it's not for everybody, but it's definitely something that we encourage where possible. You would then go live with your project and you'd share that crowdfunder link. So you'd have a specific link to your crowdfunding page that will be generated, and you can share that with all of your network and all of your community and your crowd to bring in those pledges. So that's it in a nutshell. However, obviously, the more you put into each of these stages, the more success you will see. So first and foremost, you're going to be looking at setting a target for your crowdfunding page. You do need to think about a realistic target. So something that you feel confident that you're going to be able to raise from your crowd of community around you. You can always plan to overfund a project. So by overfunding, we're talking about something that we've named a stretch target. So you would have an initial target in place, which might be £5,000, let's say. But actually, if you raise any more than that, you'll be able to do more of the project. You'll be able to roll it out for a longer amount of time, or you'll be able to add some things on which are from the wish list. In that case, you'd have a stretch target in place, which may well be £10,000. So initially, you're trying to raise the 5,000. Once you've hit that mark, you can continue to crowdfund until you're reaching your stretch target. And we give you the ability to continue to bring in those donations whilst your crowdfunding project is still live. Always start with the minimum needed that you need to make your project happen. It's a great idea to put a lot of planning into the target itself. Really think about what it's going to take to get this project off the ground and how many people you're going to be able to put the project page in front of in order to bring in those donations. There are two different ways that you can raise funds via crowdfunder. You can opt to be an all or nothing campaign, which essentially means if you do not hit your target, your initial target, then all of your supporter pledges would be refunded, and any extra funding that you'd been approved for would be refunded as well. Alternatively, you can choose to be a keep what you raise or flexible funding project, whereby even if you don't hit 100% of your target, you will keep all of the money raised by your crowd. You just would forego potentially any extra funding that you've been approved for. But each of our funding partners, their terms and conditions when it comes to hitting targets do differ. So make sure you're checking the T's and C's if you've been approved for any of the pots of money. It seems crazy to opt for the all or nothing, where if you don't hit your target, then you're going to lose everything. But this can actually work really well in some instances, especially if you have, let's say, a piece of equipment that costs a set amount of money. And actually, if you don't raise that amount of money, you're not going to be able to buy the equipment and the project's not going to happen. For sake of transparency, it might be a good idea to opt for all or nothing. However, if you know that you can make use of any money raised towards getting your project off the ground, or delivering some of your services, then you might want to opt for flexible funding. So do have a little think into both of those different mechanisms for crowdfunding, and make sure you pick the one that best suits you and your project delivery. There are some fees attached to crowdfunding. I mentioned signing up doesn't cost anything, so you can get yourself started. The only time that you will be charged any fees is on the close of a successful crowdfunder. So going back to those two mechanisms, if you were an all or nothing project and you didn't hit your target, your supporters were refunded their money, you would not be charged a penny to have used the platform and given it a go. If you're a flexible funding project, any money that you raise, you will be deemed to be successful. And so therefore you would be eligible to pay some fees out of the money that you'd raised on our platform. So the fees differ depending on the organisational structure. So when we talk about platform fees, we're talking about Crowdfunder UK hosting your project, and also obviously making use of all of the resources and all of the people here to help you along the way. So if you're a not-for-profit organisation or a charity, there are 0% platform fees, so nothing to pay for using the platform. If you're a for-profit project or for-profit business, there is a 5% fee plus VAT. Every single transaction that comes across the platform, so every donation to your page, will have a transaction fee attached to it. And again, that does differ ever so slightly depending on your organisational structure. So please do make sure that you're checking our fees table, and we'll share the link in here just to make sure you know where you sit in that, what fees may well be attached to your project. And just try to make sure when setting your target that you're actually absorbing those fees. So maybe think about adding a few % on top of your initial target amount, just to make sure that when you close your crowdfunder successfully, you come away with the amount that you were hoping to raise, not the amount minus fees. So make sure you can cover those fees and absorb those in your target is always a good idea. And any additional costs that might crop up as well throughout the course of the crowdfunder. You might be putting some marketing in print, for example, or if you're doing it some rewards, you might have a delivery cost associated with some of those. So make sure you're covering all of those potential costs as well within your target that you've put in place for your project. We mentioned extra funding there. So extra funding can be a really good boost for your project if you're an eligible organisation, an eligible project within our platform. Please do make sure that you check out the extra funding page, and I'll pop that in here now, just to see what funds are available in your locality, and also our national funds, just to see if you might be eligible. And then in terms of applying for those, we always recommend that you start your crowdfunding page, get it to a stage where you're really confident that you're telling your message in a really clear and concise way, and then think about putting in applications for those funding partners that you've been matched with before going live with your project wherever possible. That way, if you're getting approvals from these funding partners, it's a really good message to go out with at the launch of your crowdfunding campaign. You know, we're launching this crowdfunder, we're being supported by X, Y, and Z match funds. Any money that you donate will be matched, or if we hit this milestone, we will receive X amount from whichever funding partner. It's brilliant to know what your goalposts are and what milestones you need to hit ahead of going live. You can, of course, apply whilst you're live. That's not a problem at all, but our recommendation would be think about it in the planning stages and the creating of your page, and plan to put in the applications before launching your project. In order to be matched with our extra funding partners, you do need to make sure that you let us know whereabouts in the country you are. So you will need to let us know your relevant postcode, and you'll also need to tick this box, which will allow us, you can see it highlighted here, will allow us to share your crowdfunder page information with our funding partners. Unfortunately, if this box is not ticked, we will not be able to match you with any of our funding partners. We need your permission to share your project page details with them. Once you have done that, and you've gone on to let us know who's likely to benefit from your project, who you're going to be working with, the potential outcomes as well from your project. So whether you're going to be tackling isolation, or it's improved mental well-being, maybe it's improved physical fitness, for example. It's all a tick box exercise. So let us know all of those wonderful potential outcomes, and our computer system will match you with as many relevant funds as they can. You would then go on to apply for those funds via your project dashboard. There's lots of useful helps and guides in our help centre on exactly how to do that. Okay, so we're going to look at what makes a good campaign. I'm conscious of time. I'm going to try not to keep you guys too far over, but I think we are going to run over a little bit because we had such brilliant info from Dino there, which was great. But let me just dip into the chat box before we get started on this one. Okay, Kate, what advice would you give to organisations that need to raise funds for staffing costs? So you can absolutely crowdfund for that. You can crowdfund for the majority of things, to be quite honest. The only thing I would say in terms of if you were interested in extra funding would be just to check the criteria and eligibility, because some of our funders may not fund staffing costs. Okay, so just double check the criteria for the funds that you're thinking of applying for. But in terms of general crowdfunding, you can absolutely crowdfund for that. Just make sure that when you're telling your story and engaging with your crowd, you're being really specific about where the money will be spent, what the outcome of spending that money in order to, cover staff costs, what does that enable you to do going forward? So just make sure that you're telling your story in a really clear and engaging way. Okay, let's see. This is, so from Grace, could the reward still be an entry into a raffle? Absolutely, we see this happen quite a lot. So just going back to sports that we know crowdfund really well, if you look on a lot of the, let's say Sport England, if you look at their extra funding page on our website, and at the bottom there, you'll see all of the different projects that have been supported. A lot of them will have a raffle on there, so they'll have lots of different rewards, but one may well be entry into a raffle that they're going to be holding in the club at the home game at the end of the season. They're going to have a big shindig, and part of that is going to be a raffle. So yes, absolutely, you can do. The other thing that we offer as well is you can actually set up as a prize draw specifically. So we have a format of a crowdfunding page, which is a prize draw only. So each of your rewards, if you like, are different level entry kind of tickets, whether that's one ticket all the way up to however many you want to do for a set amount of money. But they work really well if you've got either a big prize that you're looking to kind of raffle off, or you've got a few kind of higher end prizes and you'll be able to bring in quite a lot of money just through the raffle alone. So you could do a prize draw. But yes, in terms of adding in a raffle element into your general crowdfunding page, absolutely. Megan, can donations be gift aided? Yes, we do give you the ability to amass and accrue gift aid on your page. When it comes to actually drawing that down from HMRC, you can download a gift aid report at the end of your crowdfunder as well. Okay, so I'm going to dive straight back into the slides. We've got some brilliant questions coming in, and I will loop back into the chat box in a moment. But let's just take a look at what makes a good crowdfunding campaign. So ultimately, it's a really brilliant balance between the team, which is you guys, the network around you, so who you're going to reach out to and who you're going to tap into for those donations and pledges, and the story that you're telling, so how you're engaging with those people. You want to make sure that your story is, as we talked about with Dino, resonating with people that know about your organization, and know about your potential project. You might even be delivering it already, versus people who might not have heard of you. So make sure that it's landing really well with both of those networks, and get feedback at each stage, just so that you know that your story is really resonating with a wide variety of your network. People pledge because they believe in your idea. So that's going to be people that already know you, your loved ones, your friends, your family, people that are linked to your organization, your project already, or they want the reward because you've managed to source some really, really wonderful rewards, not only from yourselves potentially, but from your community, maybe the business community. And actually, they're really incentivized. They're a brilliant bargain, or they're an experience that not everybody gets to have. It might be a one-off experience, and that's going to really draw people to donate on the page as well. So you want to strike the balance between those two. We've got some brilliant online resources to help you. So we've got our 3 steps to success, which is all part of our Learn Guide as well. I'm going to share the Learn Guide in here with you very quickly, but again, we'll put it into the follow-up email. This is a little online course that it's definitely worth making your way through. You've got 4 separate modules, an introduction to crowdfunding, and then you've also got planning, creating and running a project. By the time you've worked through all of these, you'll have all of the confidence needed to be able to crowdfund really effectively. So please do work your way through in your own time. This is just a brief snapshot of the Crowdfunder Learn page. It's really user-friendly, lots of short little videos, multiple choice questions, nothing too kind of time-consuming or laborious, but it's a really, really useful tool, and I highly recommend that you make every use of it so that you can really put as much as you can into each different stage. Share it with those that are going to be involved in the crowdfunder as well. Make sure you're all on the same page. The next thing would be to explore different projects. So I mentioned all of the different types of projects that come through the platform. You can take a look at the website and you can go up to the top there and hit explore, which is just on the left. You'll be able to filter through the massive list of all the different projects via location, if you wish, some keywords that maybe resonate with what you're going to be doing as a project. I always recommend that you filter to look at successful projects. That way you'll be able to see who's managed to do it effectively, what kind of money they've been raising, things that work well in terms of rewards. You can always click through from their page to their social media platforms as well, see how they've been promoting it. You know, really do take inspiration from people that have come before you as well. We talk about network a lot and your crowd. One of the tools that you are prompted to create, one of the things that you are asked to do in terms of the Learn platform is to actually create a network map. Now, this can take many forms. For some people, it's an Excel spreadsheet. For others, it's a massive wall in their house covered in loads of Post-it notes. Whatever works for you, but ultimately you need to make sure that somewhere you have written down all of the different people within these areas and how you can contact them. So you're going to start with your friends and family, maybe your colleagues as well. So your nearest and dearest, people that will support you because they are behind you and they want to see you succeed, and they know about the project, know about you. You're also going to think about existing supporters. So that might be people that are already using the service. That might be people that are part of a mailing list. It could even be people that you have collaborative relationships with, you know, maybe some other organizations where you kind of support each other when it comes to promotion and things like that. Partners, that can take various forms. It could be suppliers, it could be venues. Again, it could be different organizations that you work with in the community. You're also going to think about Facebook and other social media platforms in how to engage with a potentially wider audience. So have a little look about the different groups that are available on Facebook in your area. Normally there's kind of community groups that are set up and have their own page. So do a bit of research ahead of time to make sure you can send maybe a little message to the admin of these groups and see if you can actually promote via the social media groups, and also Facebook and social media pages for your project. So if you don't have one set up already for your organization or your business or charity, please make sure that you do that ahead of time. It's a really brilliant way to centralize all of your promotion. Try and avoid doing it from your own personal account if you can. Obviously, if it's for a personal cause, that's slightly different. But if it's for a project that's linked to a specific business or organization, do try and make sure it's got its own social media channel, social media platform. Local businesses and local people. So think about any networking events that might be coming up, but also make sure you've got contacts for local businesses that you can reach out to. And then finally, press and blogs as well. So don't be shy of contacting different media outlets, making sure that you can actually cue them ahead of time to run some press coverage or maybe some a little media shout out, or on the radio, for example, when you're doing really well with your crowdfunder. Everybody can help you when it comes to crowdfunding. So when you're going out and speaking to people about your crowdfunder, have in mind that Possibly not everybody's going to be able to financially contribute. However, they will be able to do one of these things. And some of your network, maybe the business community particularly, might be able to do all three of these. So I know it can be difficult when you're going out and asking for money and for donations from people. But if you have this in mind, that actually there's other ways that people can help kind of drive your crowdfunder forward, that can take some of the pressure off of feeling as if you're asking for money only from people. So they can share your project, they can share it with their networks, with their social media channels, maybe in their own mailing list, especially if they've supported you, maybe with a reward. So they may be able to offer you a reward to put onto your page, and they may be able to make a financial contribution as well. So do make sure that you're giving people all of the options to be able to support you, and you may well be surprised as to how people can support you in more than one way. Finding your audience, we mentioned Facebook there. You can search for groups. Make sure you're searching for groups that are local to you, groups that might be sharing and talking about similar subject matter to your projects. And then also just using a search engine such as Google, you can search for anything that's appearing in the news. So that might be local press that's running a story which has resonance with your project's subject matter. It might be that there's somebody being interviewed on the local radio, for example. So make sure that you are searching for a slightly wider audience using the tools that are readily available to you. When it comes to the news aspect, you'll be able to find contact details within those articles or for the newspaper or radio station, and approach them to be able to actually run a little article about yourselves once you've hit a good stage of your crowdfunder, and that's normally around the kind of 60% raised is when you want to be having a bit of a shout out, local radio, local media. We do give you a really brilliant, it's not necessarily a template, but it's a guide on how to create a really good press release. And it's a brilliant idea to make sure that you're doing that ahead of time, that you're actually giving this press release to media outlets such as the local radio or local press. It gives them more of an opportunity to run with it, because actually they're not doing the legwork. It's a lot easier for them to put something into print or onto their social media channels if they've got all of the relevant information to hand. So if you take the legwork out of it for them and you make sure that you kind of spoon feed them the information with the press release, you're more likely to yield results rather than asking them to just take a look at your crowdfunding page and write something about it. So that kind of goes for the majority of your promotion. Make it as easy as possible for people to support you. Tell them how they can support you. Really walk them through the process of coming and clicking on your page and what they need to do when they get there. One of the things that you'll see when you set up your page is you'll have a unique project link, which will be automatically changed to the same as your project title. Basically, if you want that to be something different, you can edit it in this highlighted box. We always recommend that you keep it as something which is really relevant to your project. Couple of reasons. One, people will see straight away that it's related to the project that you're talking about, but also, as I'm sure you can appreciate, over the last couple of years especially, there's been so much kind of spam going through with people getting texts and emails about claiming parcels and all these kinds of horrendous things that then take them to these sites and take their money, that you want to make sure it doesn't look like a spam link. It needs to look like it's genuine, it's coming from you, it's exactly what it says on the tin when it comes to click on this and you'll be taken straight to my project page. So make it as clear as possible. When it comes to putting your crowdfunder together, Dino mentioned there about a short video. Definitely a really good idea. Make sure that it's short and sweet, maybe a minute to 2 minutes max. If it's somebody talking to camera, just letting us know who you are as an organization or as a business, why you're crowdfunding, what you're crowdfunding for, and how the money raised is going to help you and how people can help support you. If you can just sum up those few things in a couple of minutes, you're going to really resonate with your supporters that especially are short on time. You know, this whole page is like a shop window into who you are and what you're trying to achieve. And at the moment, especially, we live in a very kind of scroll-heavy society where you really need to hook in people's attention from the very start of their journey looking at your page. So this is a brilliant way to surmise everything. And for some people, that's all it will take is this video for them to engage and support you. For others, they will carry on and read through the rest of the page. Some will even go and click on those hyperlinks and read around the subject on websites or whatever. But make sure that you are taking every opportunity to just hook in your audience and your supporters at every turn. So that's going to be adding a video, if possible, if you feel confident to do that, and we give you all of the advice so you can do it confidently. Making sure that you're using pictures on the page and use people wherever possible. People like to support people, okay? So they want to see who's behind the project. Use headings and pick out key information in bold as well, just to make sure you're drawing the reader's eye throughout the course of the page and making sure that they are taking in the information that you want them to see. When it comes to rewards, there are lots of different things you can offer as rewards. Everything from a product and a service all the way through to a virtual high five and a thank you, which would be a small amount, a small price tag on that kind of reward. But think about experiences and events that you might be able to offer, maybe sponsorship, for example, that you might aim at the business community. But try and have a varied amount of different price points and try and think about what would engage with not only people that already have a connection with you, but also that wider community as well. So you can actually choose to multiply your fundraising as well. So by opting to be a multiplier on our website, it allows you to give the fundraising back into the hands of your supporters. When you become a multiplier project, you will see this button appear on the left here, and this will appear on your crowdfunder page, and it will say start fundraising. People will then be able to go on and start fundraising and set up their own project pages that will be linked to yours, which is brilliant if you want to really engage the community with getting behind you and raising those funds. Again, it's another way they can support you without necessarily needing to financially contribute, but it's a way in which they can tap into their own networks. It might be that you set a fundraising challenge, for example, and maybe it's a bit of a competition, or maybe it's a step challenge or a walking challenge, something along those lines, where you're really engaging your supporters and bringing them along for the journey when it comes to raising those funds. They'll all have their own individual crowdfunding pages, so they're all individual little fundraisers, but all of their supporters and all of the money raised will funnel back onto your main page. So it's a really good boost to your target, how much you're raising, and also a really great boost in terms of those supporter numbers as well. I'm just going to take a quick pause here. I appreciate that we are going to run over ever so slightly. I'll be back with you in just one moment. What I think would be a good thing to do is to just take a quick little look at a video from a really wonderful project, Global Grooves. And I hope you will agree that actually this kind of video, where it's talking to camera about all of the wonderful things that they do, really helps you to get behind the project and would help you to really want to get behind and support this project. So I'll just play this one for a moment for you, and then we'll come straight back into the slides.
Hi, I'm Freya. I'm a producer for Global Grooves, who are a carnival arts charity based in Tameside. Global Grooves brings inspirational carnival from across the globe into the heart of our communities. We deliver training programmes, youth workshops, community development and large-scale carnival performances. Everyone knows the feeling of seeing a great carnival in the streets, the energy and the excitement of it, but here at Global Grooves we involve the whole community in putting a carnival together. Through this process, people learn new skills, they make new friendships and build better futures for themselves and their neighbours, working together over months and years and getting to know each other really well. Future Leaders is our flagship youth leadership scheme. Over the last 7 years, we've provided 160 talented young people from across the UK with life-changing creative opportunities. Our Future Leaders develop their skills in their art form through masterclasses, in addition to learning about the business and social side of arts leadership. With these tools under their belt, they gain hands-on experience in running their own creative and social action projects. And of course, all the young people make new friendships and connections which last a lifetime. We're really proud that so many of our future leaders are now working as professional artists within the sector, delivering really impactful work in their local communities, from Greater Manchester to Brazil to South Korea to the Gambia and beyond. We're about to start recruiting for the next cohort of 40 future leaders. It costs £2,000 per participant to deliver the residential programme, and whilst we have some of our funding, we still have a shortfall, and we'd love to reach as many young people with this opportunity as possible. The programme encourages young people to really value their creativity and to believe that they can make change, and I know that because I've been on the journey myself. Since I first joined the programme at 15 years old, I've learned so much and had the chance to develop my own creativity both across the UK and internationally. By 17, I'd already run my own community festival alongside the Global Grooves team, and I'm now working full-time with them, helping to produce one of the biggest productions yet. We'd really love your support in helping to reach as many young people as possible and helping them to empower themselves to become the cultural leaders that we believe that we need in our communities, and we can only do that with your support.
So I hope you would agree there. I mean, that actually is a little bit more than 2 minutes. So that's kind of how much content you can fit into not much more than a couple of minutes. Really brilliant project, really bright, colourful, engaging. It's brilliant to hear from somebody who's benefited from the project itself. Speaking to camera doesn't have to be too over scripted, but we do recommend you have a bit of a script in place. And then also just making sure that wherever possible, you're on location or you're using people that are going to benefit from the project in the background can really help to bring the whole video to life. So just looking a little bit at the actual kind of creating of that project and running it, when you're setting your crowdfunder time frame, do try and aim towards maybe a 4 to 5 week live crowdfunding campaign. It's quite a short, sharp injection of fundraising. You want to make sure that you have a really good kind of momentum running throughout it all. And that can be quite exhausting if it goes on for much longer than around that 5 week mark. If you run a really long campaign, it doesn't necessarily mean you're going to accrue lots of donations unless you've got a plan in place and you might have different events going on, for example, throughout the course of that longer crowdfunder. So do be mindful about how long you're going to be running your crowdfunding campaign for. Do make sure wherever possible that you're running it over a couple of different paydays as well, just to be able to give people an additional opportunity to support you. And if you've got any events in your calendar as well that you want to incorporate as part of the crowdfunder, that's always a really lovely idea. You might want to think about a launch party, for example, or a closing party, or it might be that you'd be able to sell tickets to an event that you might be running just after the close of the crowdfunder. So think about how it fits within your calendar for your organisation as well. Make sure that you commit to a live date as well. Give yourself a deadline. It's always a brilliant thing to put a little bit of pressure on yourselves to make sure you're working to a deadline. Otherwise, you might find you keep pushing that back and keep pushing that back. I think the majority of people work better when they're working to a slight time frame. So do try and be mindful of that and be held accountable as well. If you can have people around you to work on the crowdfunder with you, that really helps. Review your marketing plan. So do have a plan in place. Make sure you know when you're going to be reaching out to people, how you're going to be reaching out to them. Make sure you have your first 20 pledges lined up. So speak to those that you know you can count on in terms of financial support. And that might be friends and family, colleagues, people who are already supporting you. If you can make sure you secure those first 20 pledges, the idea would be that you go live with your project, you reach back out to those 20 people to put a donation onto your page, and only at that point would you then start your kind of promotion of your crowdfunder. That way, when you're promoting your crowdfunder, it already looks as though it's got some support. It already looks as though it's got it's well on its way because you've received financial donations already. And at that point, you might want to throw a launch party. For example, you might have a launch event that could be just something virtual, it could be in person, and then beyond that you're going to start promoting your crowdfunder through all of the different mediums, all the way through from word of mouth through to social media, press, and things like that. And make sure you engage with your project dashboard. You can run and manage every element of your crowdfunding campaign via your dashboard, so do make sure you're using that as best you can. You will see that when you launch your crowdfunding campaign, a lot of donations come in that first week. People are excited to get behind you. You're excited, so you're talking about it with everybody and it's bringing in those donations. Quite often we can see, obviously depending on the target that needs to be raised, you can see almost half of the money come in the first week or so. Traditionally, there is a peak of interest at the start and at the end of a crowdfunder. So don't be surprised if you see a bit of a lull in the middle. We call it the crowdfunding U-shape. So people are excited, they pledge, the message kind of gets a little bit lost sometimes in the middle there, and then it peaks back up at the end. This is another reason why we say to not run a really long campaign, because it can just increase the lull in the middle rather than those peaks towards the end. Knowing that that's going to take place, make sure you've got a really solid plan of marketing to be able to try and combat that lull. So keep up the momentum. Some things that you might want to think about is holding back on some of the rewards that you've managed to be gifted from the community, or that you might be able to offer, so that you can add these in throughout the course of that lull to really bring and pique interest back with the page and with the crowdfunder. It might be that you've got some other little promotional tricks up your sleeve, and it might be that you're running an event, or that actually you've got a fundraising day happening outside of the crowdfunder and you're going to funnel that money on via your organization. There are lots of different things that you can do in order to make sure that that lull is as small as possible. And using things like our Knowledge Hub and all of the different guides and hints that we have, you'll hopefully be able to combat that quite effectively. So this is just a very quick snapshot of how you're going to be planning to reach out to people over a 4-week period. So this is a 4-week crowdfunder. So initially, you'll be thinking about engaging with your team and your friends and family to make sure that you're securing those pledges when you first go live. At that point, once you've got some pledges on your page, you're going to reach out to your existing supporters. So that's people who know about you and your business or your project. That could be mailing lists, for example, people who you can kind of guarantee their support because they're already in support of you. Beyond that, it will be partners. Like we mentioned, that could be suppliers, that could be venues, could be collaborative organizations. And only really at that point, when you're around kind of 40% raised, are you going to start thinking about going out to social media. This is going to engage with potentially a slightly wider audience who, when coming to view your page, will be more incentivized to give if they can see that it's already had quite a bit of support. They don't necessarily want to be the first ones to give, so try and avoid shouting about it on social media until you're at a really quite a healthy stage of fundraising. Beyond that, you're going to reach out to local people and local businesses. That could be networking events. That could be the local businesses that have supported you with rewards, really shouting about you on their social media as well. And then beyond that is going to be press and blogs. You're going to queue up those conversations ahead of time as part of the planning element of your crowdfunder, but you don't really want them to run any story or anything about your crowdfunder until you're around 60% raised. Because again, people can see that the end is in sight. They might not know you personally, they might not know of the organization, but they can see that the project is a worthy cause, or it's a business that they really want to see happen. So they'll get behind that on the basis that they know that their money is going to help you get over the line. So think tactically about how you're reaching out and promoting your crowdfunder at different stages. So this is just a snapshot here of when is best to start talking to people. So make sure you're using all of these different avenues as well. So talk to people you would normally talk to. If that's people at the checkout in the supermarket or where you normally get your coffee, speak to people face to face. Word of mouth is still really invaluable when it comes to promotion. In terms of emailing people, that comes at around 20% raised towards your target. Use contacts wherever you can. Try and avoid sending blanket emails. You want to make them as personable as possible. You don't want them to just fall kind of into somebody's spam and it's not been directly sent to themselves. So try and avoid blanket emails. Try and keep your messaging clear, depending on the type of the type of area, of your network that you're approaching. Make sure as well that you're picking up the phone. If you normally speak to somebody on the phone, speak to them on the phone. The same goes for WhatsApp and Facebook Messenger and all those kind of things. Utilize it all. Don't change the way that you normally communicate with people. Events can be really strong. You can bring people together face to face. You could do a Facebook Live event, for example, the countdown to launching the project or the countdown to closing. But make sure that you can utilize all of the different avenues. Print can be really good. If that's something that fits well with you, you will have access to a QR code that you can download and put onto any print that you have, so people can scan that with their phones and be taken straight to your page. So there's lots of little useful things that we offer you to make sure you can really engage with those around you. This is again a snapshot just quickly of your project dashboard. So you can see that you can manage pretty much every aspect of your project via this dashboard. You'll be able to apply for extra funding. You'll be able to see your supporters. You'll also be able to post updates to your page. And we recommend that you do that regularly throughout the course of the crowdfunder and beyond, to be honest. It's a brilliant way to engage with those that have supported you already, because it will be emailed out to them, but it also appears on your page. So actually looking back, you'll be able to click on those and see what it was that you were up to. You might want to keep adding into those as the project itself kind of comes to fruition, just to keep people along for the journey. And anybody looking at your project page can click on that and see what you've been up to as part of the crowdfunder and outside of the crowdfunder too. So think about it as another kind of string to your bow when it comes to promotion. You can see here on the right just the different analytics that you'll have access to. So you'll be able to see, based on recent activity, what you're trending towards raising. You'll also be able to see when your donations are coming onto your page. So you can kind of correspond that with any of your promotion and think what's working and what isn't. You know, did the Facebook post that you launched last night bring in some more donations today? Or do you need to kind of rethink how you're messaging your promotion? There's heaps of resources available to you guys. We have webinars like this each month. We have drop-in sessions every week, so you can come along and meet other project owners and talk to us about your crowdfunders and any questions that you might have. We have the online learning guides. I've shared one of them into the chat box, but we will obviously share it in the follow-up email as well. We've also got the Knowledge Hub, which I've mentioned a few times. Now, the Knowledge Hub is brilliant. It's full of some really wonderful articles for every single stage of your crowdfunding campaign. Make sure you visit it, because if you've got any questions on how to put together engaging content and tell your story, or a video, for example, or press release, then it's full of all of that wonderful information. So do make sure you visit that. We also have our help center, which is full of brilliant FAQs and troubleshooting guides. So that's the first place to visit if you have anything that's kind of stumping you and you're not quite sure how to tackle it. Then definitely check out the help center. And beyond that, we have a wonderful customer support team based down here in, I would say, sunny Cornwall. It's kind of cloudy, drizzly Cornwall at the moment. They're a very small team. They're a very dedicated team. It may well take a couple of days for them to get back to you, worst case. So please just make sure you're utilising all of the other resources where possible. But if in doubt, do contact those guys. And then that live project dashboard that I mentioned as well. I'm really conscious that we have run quite heavily over time, but for those of you that are sticking with us, I'm going to see if I can get around all these questions that have come through very quickly. Okie dokie. So, question in. Bear with me 1 second. Okay, so I think we covered this one from Jamie. Are you able to add and change the rewards on offer throughout the campaign? You can absolutely add rewards on through the campaign, definitely. In terms of editing them, it can be slightly tricky depending on the reward. If somebody has claimed on that reward, then no, not necessarily. You can't edit it because it kind of changes the goalposts of what they've actually donated on. But yes, if it hasn't been claimed, then you will be able to, but you would need to contact us once your project's live in order to do that in terms of rewards. But ahead of going live, you can edit them. You can edit the majority of your page, in all honesty, once you are live, but the only tricky things are rewards and your target. So you will need to make sure you think carefully about those and make sure the wording on them is how you would like them to appear on your page. But in terms of drip feeding extra rewards on, absolutely, it's something that we recommend that you do to keep that supporter engagement up throughout that kind of middle period of your crowdfunder especially. Okay, message in from Claire. Can you offer a small percentage investment in your company if the project is for a commercial startup? You can offer many things. So you might be able to offer rewards that are directly linked to the business. For example, we have lots of pre-sale on products, for example, or it might be a discount on the business itself going forward. But in terms of investment, that's not something that we would be able to offer. There is an additional platform out there called Crowdcube, I believe it is, and that is an equity-based crowdfunding platform. So the principles are still the same, but you are actually, in terms of rewards, in inverted commas, that would be a percentage of equity in your business. As far as Crowdfunder UK goes, we don't actually give you the ability to offer equity, but what you might be able to do is think about what rewards from your business you could offer going forward, whereby you don't need to forego any equity in terms of being able to bring in the financial raise. So unfortunately not, but we can offer, you know, lots of other things that you may be able to put up there as a reward. Okay, so question from David. How does crowdfunding differ for businesses compared to charities? I mean, it doesn't in its essence. You know, crowdfunding is, in its purest form, raising money from those around you to make something happen, whether that's a business, whether that is a charity, whether that's a community organisation or a sports club. So the principles are still the same. The only thing that might differ is depending on who we work with at that moment in time that you launch your crowdfunder, whether there is any business support in terms of extra funding. We have had that in the past. At the moment, there's a lot of not-for-profit eligibility in terms of people supporting, you know, community organisations, but we have worked with people and big corporations in the past that are offering extra funding to startup businesses, for example. So it doesn't take you out the running for extra funding necessarily. You just have to see what's available at that time of launching your crowdfunder. But in terms of the principles, exactly the same. You're going to create a page. You're going to tell us and your audience all about who you are and what you're doing, why you need to raise the money. If you can offer some rewards, brilliant. And as I just mentioned, that might be a pre-sale on certain products. That could be, you know, saying quite clearly that unless you raise that money, you're not going to be able to put X, Y, and Z into place in order to launch the business. So it's about being clear and engaging with telling your story and how people supporting you is going to benefit you going forward, and how that in turn may well benefit those around you. You know, is there a real gap in the market for your particular business? It's a good exercise in research and development as much as it is in raising money, because you're going to see if there's an appetite for what you're trying to launch. And if there is, then you've got a captive customer base when you finally can, you know, get your business up and running. So it works really well for startups. It works really well for businesses as well. As I mentioned, the principles are still the same. It's just how you get your message across to people. And that's relevant to everybody, not just businesses. Is there a time limit for the projects? This is from Bryn. I think I covered that one. We recommend 4 to 5 weeks. We do give you the ability to run for up to 10 weeks. You can manage that yourself and you set your project deadline. But I would only recommend running for that amount of time if you've got a really solid plan of activity in place to promote your crowdfunder. Okay, and then just getting back to Kate, just wondering whether it's worth having a separate project for the staffing of a project of an organisation. Not necessarily. It really depends on if you're going to be raising money for other things as well. It could be one element of a bigger picture. It's just worth, if you're thinking about those extra funding options, if that's something that you fit into, just check the eligibility criteria just to make sure that, you know, what you're raising money for fits with what they're offering to match fund. But in terms of keeping it all together, it's probably a good idea rather than running 2 separate crowdfunders. The only way I would say running 2 separate crowdfunders works is if you give enough time in between each one. Try not to run them simultaneously, because it's a lot of work for yourself and it's going to potentially lead to mixed messages for your crowd. If you know you need to raise a large amount of money, or maybe what you're doing comes in phases or if you know you're going to have to crowdfund again in the near future, try and make sure you leave a little bit of a gap. So when it comes to yours, Kate, if you just want to do one crowdfunder that covers it all, that might be the best way to go. If you've decided to run a crowdfunder specifically for the staffing costs on top of your project, I would recommend that you do one and you leave around kind of 3 to 6 months at least before you launch another one, just to give yourself a break and also to make sure that your crowd can have a bit of a break from that message of crowdfunding as well, because essentially you're going to go back out to the same audience. So have a little think about all of those and what might work best for you depending on your timeframes and when you need to potentially bring in the funds. Okay, let me just check back into the chat box and just see that we've covered everything. So Layla, if you have free community classes or workshops, but you are a profit startup, are you still eligible for some of the not-for-profit extra funding? You will need to check the T's and C's of the different funds that you might be interested in. Sometimes it does come down to the organizational structure as opposed to in what format you're going to want to deliver the project, if that makes sense. But really, it's a case of just checking all of those T's and C's for those extra funds and seeing where you might fit into all of those. Okay. Saida, this is just very last one here. What about an ongoing project? So if you're thinking about an ongoing project, there are options that can facilitate that. Ultimately, crowdfunding should be a short, sharp injection of raising money. We do give you the option as a successful crowdfunder. So once your project has closed successfully, you can always opt to be an always on project, and that will stay visible on our platform for generally around kind of 6 months or so. That does give people the ability to keep donating to your project, but you won't be able to offer things like rewards. You won't be eligible for things like the extra funding. So just think carefully whether being an always on project would be more beneficial than having a short project, closing it, taking a break, and then maybe coming back to it a little bit further down the line. So there are lots of different things that we can do to support that in terms of remaining visible on the page and being live for a longer period of time. But just make sure that it's something that's going to definitely work for you. And there's lots of information in the help center about that, actually. Just type in always on and you'll get a brilliant guide on what is involved with being an always on project. Okay, so I'm very conscious that I've kept you here far too long. Thank you so much for those of you that have stuck with me. Hopefully you've had some good information. It's going to give you the confidence to go out and start at least thinking about whether this is a good idea for you guys. Would you mind if I pop a little poll just into the chat box here? If you get a moment, please would you just click yes or no, or if you need more info, if you feel confident to start your crowdfunding journey off the back of this session, that'd be really beneficial. And just a few next steps for you all. So we talked about the Learn platform. Make sure that's part of the email, so you can click on that and work your way through that at some point. Make sure you're exploring other projects. Make sure you take a look at the website and see what resonates with you as a supporter. Okay, always put yourself in the eyes of the supporter as well as being the project owner to see what works in terms of engaging you with a page, and then check for extra funding if that's something that might be applicable to you and your project. But ultimately, if you go to the crowdfunding page and click the Start Crowdfunding button, what that will do as well is trigger all of our wonderful specific tailored emails that will signpost you in the right direction to make sure you can make the most of the crowdfunding platform and we can support you as best we can. So thank you so much to everybody that's attended today. We've got a resounding 100% yes, which is very exciting. It means we're doing our job well from our side. Please do pop along to any of the drop-ins coming up in the future. You can book onto them via Eventbrite the same way that you booked onto this webinar. We will again share the links to that, but I'll pop it in the chat box for you now. And thank you again for sticking with us. And we wish you all the best with your crowdfunding journeys. And please do pop back and see us. Thank you very much.